session.
And we have Robin Miller from Archives in UW. It's Archives.
Next time,
No.
The library.
UW Eau Claire Library.
you're open every day.
And she's talking about AI. It was
Wednesday
kind of
through Friday,
interesting
and
because
it's
Dave
noon.
Armstrong was here this morning. He's our economic development coordinator.
Sure. Yeah.
For the county. And he was telling us, one of the topics he was supposed to talk about was helping us find money.
Oh,
And
sure.
he was primarily using AI to find that. So that
Oh,
was
interesting. Neat.
So, all right.
Well, thank you, Tammy, for inviting me here today. So, my name is Robin Miller, and I am a librarian down at McIntyre Library at UW Eau Claire. So, I am not an archivist. I just want to be as clear as day about that. I never archive anything. I have no responsibility for archives. And I say that because I have some wonderful, very talented colleagues who are archivists. And if you have questions about archival materials and how our library could support you in your local history work, I can put you in touch with them. But I have no expertise in that particular area.
Sorry about
So,
that.
no, I just want to make sure we know, because archivists are very special. So I'm a plain old librarian, and I, in the last few years, have been invited by many local organizations throughout western and northern Wisconsin to talk about artificial intelligence. We're all hearing a lot about this, right? So it's everywhere. It's in the news. We see it when we log into the internet. We hear about people using AI in all kinds of ways. So a minute ago you mentioned that you'd heard of someone using an AI tool for doing fundraising research. This is a great application of an AI search. I think that there's a lot of confusion about what AI is and how exactly we find it and use it. And that's partly because artificial intelligence has come to us kind of all of a sudden in many different contexts. So I've heard you for the last hour talking about ways that your organizations communicate with each other. You use the internet, obviously. And AI is something that the average consumer is interacting with using internet tools. MIT has given us just a nice, succinct definition of AI. You can find many, much more lengthy definitions, but I like this one because it just gets to kind of the brass tacks of how I, as a regular person, might think about AI. So, referring to machines that can learn, these machines can reason, they can act for themselves. They can make their own decisions when faced with a new situation in the same way that a human or an animal can. So if we think about this in terms of everyday life and a problem we might have, for example, what should I feed my family for Easter dinner? Well, AI might be able to help us with that little question. It's a big question to me. I want to feed my family well, and maybe my family has a whole bunch of dietary requirements. And so it needs to be gluten-free, and it needs to have a vegetarian option, and it needs to be something that I can serve by about 2 in the afternoon, and maybe start at about 11 a.m. So I have a bunch of details, and I could ask that question to an AI tool, and it might give me some suggestions. So that's a way of thinking about an everyday person and how we might conceive of using AI. You have probably also thought about AI from our popular culture representations of artificial intelligence. We've had these for a long time. So whether you're a Stanley Kubrick fan or you more recently enjoyed watching WALL-E with a grandchild or something like that, artificial intelligence has been in our common discourse for a long time. we have ways of thinking about how sinister, in the case of iRobot or 2001 Space Odyssey could be, but we also have ways of thinking about it in a more positive way. Like with WALL-E, that's a friendly robot. He's trying to save humanity and clean the earth after a calamity. So, you know, there are different ways for us to think about this. One of my favorite films that uses AI is War Games. I think I watched this for the first time in a 7th grade science class, and I've always thought about how AI could be used to thwart global thermonuclear war. So I mean, there are different ways that we have thought about AI tools and conceptualized them and even given them a personality or ascribed some positive or negative qualities to the tool. And so that's kind of weird because now we're in this situation in life where suddenly it's not fiction anymore, it's something that we might interact with in our daily lives. So you have probably heard of some AI tools. One problem with these tools is that they keep changing, the companies that own them and make them keep changing the names. So for example, Copilot started out as being called Sydney. So if you hear someone say Sydney, they may actually mean Copilot, and so on. It doesn't really matter what their names are. These are tools you can access on the internet, and you can ask them questions. So some of them are going to charge you to have an account, and some of them will offer their services for free. It really depends. An interesting thing about our current situation with AI is that these tools are not a public utility. It's not like they're coming to us like the water comes out of the faucet, or the water is drawn from the well. Rather, they are built and maintained and developed by for-profit companies. There's probably going to be some regulation in the future, but I mention this because as users of the internet, we are to a great extent subject to the whims of the companies that are building these tools. And that, in many cases, is going to affect what we as regular people can do with them. So you might say to yourself, oh gee, I really wish I could have an AI tool that would do something for me. But that might not exist yet, and that might be because these companies have not decided that that would be a worthy endeavor for them. So just remembering that these are tools that are not necessarily developed for the benefit of the public. They're developed for the bottom line of the owners of the tools. Okay, so particularly in the back, I know that many of you cannot see these words, but I'll just share that a general way of thinking about what AI can do for us is thinking of it in terms of decision support, learning. That's something that that on a consumer level might not be super applicable to us. Natural language processing, so interpreting the words that people say. And then finally, neural networks, which is something that is happening more on like the cloud level and much less on individual use. Another way of thinking about what these tools actually do is thinking about what I can do with them today. So I can use an AI tool to listen to something. I can use it to plan or to forecast or to predict. I can use it to write something quickly. I could use it to interpret or compare. And so I'm going to give you some examples. In museums and archives, I think some of the examples can be synthesized in a few ways. So we can use them to process information, analyze data, explore something, and even to relate. So I'll just focus for a moment on relating. So if you have ever been at your museum or maybe just anywhere in the world and you've encountered someone who speaks a language that you don't speak and you need to find a way to communicate. AI tools have already introduced some wonderful language translation capabilities to people in the world. I see this all the time with new international students who've just arrived in Eau Claire and are just starting out their student lives at UW Eau Claire. So they might bring Google Translate on their phone to me to ask a complex question about, say, how to set up the printer for their computer. Something that their many years of English learning hadn't quite prepared them for, but Google Translate can help us translate those complex technical words. So imagine you're giving a tour and someone raises their hand and says, I'm here with my friend who's from France, and she has some questions. So Google Translate could be a really good tool for you to, in the moment, translate the words you're saying into French so that she could understand that too. So that's one of many ways we can imagine relating using AI tools, particularly in the space where you may just not have resources at that very second. You might not have the French-speaking translator who lives 30 miles away and who you've called before to come on down and answer your questions. So I'm going to give you some other examples, though, which are a little bit more visual. So this is an example of some exploration we can do using an app called Google Arts and Culture. This is a free app. You would never be asked to pay for it, to my knowledge. So Google Arts and Culture is really fun. You can use it to explore museums all over the world that have digitized images in their collections. So that's already pretty neat. But then here's a case where I have a cat, so this orange one right here. Google Arts and Culture took a photo that I uploaded of my cat, Lily, and it searched through the images in the Google Arts and Culture archive, and it found a cat with a similar countenance. It says this is an 87% match from this image of my real cat to this image here, which is a painting by Catherine Lesourier. So as one example. Over here, I took another picture of the same cat, totally different position, and it produced a Japanese woodblock print that happens to also be in the Google Arts and Culture catalog. So this is a fun thing. I can imagine all kinds of cool applications in art history, and even just demonstrating to someone that there are lots of different images and aesthetic experiences in the world, and we can explore them using internet tools. So I couldn't tell you exactly how Google wrote the code to make it so that work at a university where many students come to campus and come to the library, and they are doing historical research. And I'm not sure if you all have heard of this, but lots of kids can't read cursive anymore. And actually, I'm 45 and I struggle to read cursive too. I was just recently looking at some letters that my great-grandmother had written to my mother, and it was a struggle. I mean, my great-grandmother's handwriting was not great, but so here's an example of a letter. I just pulled this out of UW Eau Claire's Special Collections and Archives digitized letters. And so it's a letter written in cursive, and I put it into that same tool from Arizona State, and it gave me a nice transcription here.
But it doesn't make sense.
Right. Right. And so, so these tools, I said earlier I used the phrase, your mileage varies. The mileage can vary a lot. So these tools are capable of probably getting, some percentage of the information right, but it's still going to require some close reading, probably from a museum professional or volunteer, or maybe the person who donated the letter, to really read it closely and understand what it actually says, and then to make some additions or edits.
But
yes.
Next year it'll do a better job, the year after it'll do better, and eventually we can assume it'll be better than a human completely.
Sure. So when we reach the singularity, we may achieve that. We may achieve the case where it can read this and we don't need to use any of our brain power to understand this. I think that we're pretty far from that moment.
If you look at the progress in the last few years, you see it's amazing. And
it absolutely is.
People that are doing, and I'm going to preach here a minute, those of you who are digitizing a lot of stuff, and you get bogged down because you have to use past perfect to enter all these details, that's a waste of time. You just digitize them, put them out there, and know that in a few years everything can be readable, searchable, everything, without you doing a damn thing.
Yeah. One of the things that these transcription software do not do, unless it is designed specifically for that, is it will not identify the old language and the new language, like in Norwegian, Swedish, French, English, and so forth.
That's only because it hasn't gotten that far. If there's
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. They're not developed enough.
Sure.
They're not.
Right. And so there are, so going back to that idea of the mileage varies, right? And so this is where we are now, and we can think about the history of AI tools and AI transcription as, a few years old. It was democratized a few years old. A couple of years ago, we as a general public gained access to ChatGPT for free. AI tools were being developed for decades prior to that, though, and in the last 15 years, they've made a lot of big progress. Of course, William Packard started Hewlett-Packard in a garage in Palo Alto, California, more than 50 years ago, and so the history of computing has been long, and we're still working, right? And so to your point, so your letters in Polish are probably going to be digitized less quickly in this way, or transcribed in less quickly than this English one. In the case that you offered, Old English as one example, but certainly dialectical language is not handled well by these tools at all. And actually we see this a lot with college students who are trying to, and probably high school too, they're trying to do their Spanish homework with a tool like Copilot or ChatGPT, and teachers can tell immediately. And the reason is that the tools are tuned to a very specific dialect of Spanish that is not what is taught in the Spanish language textbooks. And certainly it's not taught, it's not spoken by the average Spanish speaker.
Right.
So yes, these tools are not where you would expect them to be. And about with these tools is that AI isn't everything to everyone all at once.
Right.
It's not a solution to every single problem at this moment, and we should not ever treat it as such. We can explore it though, and sometimes we'll have fun, and sometimes we'll say, well, I don't know if it got that quite right, but it's a good start. We can probably work with this, and flesh it out and get to the correct things. So I have a problem, and I understand you can't see this very well, but in the library where I work at UW Eau Claire, we have a circulation desk. You've probably been to one of those in a library. And we have students working there, and we have non-students working there. And we're trying to figure out how many students do we need at a given time, and how many permanent staff do we need at this desk at a given time. And it's hard to decide what the right staffing level is. Similarly, it's probably hard to decide, well, how many volunteers do you need for a particular event? How many people do you need handing out water, checking tickets, giving tours, managing the crowds, all of those things. And so all organizations like libraries and museums have some form of data, participation data, like how many tickets did I sell this year? How many books did I check out? How many audio recorders did I allow students to borrow, and so on? And what time did I do that? When was it busiest? And just lots and lots of different data points. So my problem is that I have a lot of data, and I also need to know how many people using this data should staff the service point that I manage. And so a lot of the artificial intelligence use that's happening in business settings is analysis. It's not necessarily, let me make a picture of myself with a pearl earring. It's more asking questions and getting answers that might help my business or organization to function better. So in this case, I prompted to Copilot. I uploaded the document, and I asked it to summarize the hundreds and hundreds of lines of text or data in the spreadsheet that I showed you a little image of. And then it gave me a summary right here. It told me that the average number of loans that we give out at my circulation desk in my library is 14.46. So that's 14.46 people are coming to the circ desk in a given hour to borrow something of any kind. The average number of events per semester, or I think per day, is 124. So it's tabulating things up for me. This is not something that everyone here would use AI for, but it has a real use, and Tammy asked me to mention that sort of using AI for analytics or analyzing our traffic or our participation in an organization. So this is an example where I have used this in my own work. And I think that it has some good broad applications for anyone who's trying to plan a, say a work day for a group of people or volunteers. In a different question I asked, using the same data, how many times per hour do we check out equipment? And it was 4.5. And then how many times per hour do we check out books? And it was once. That's pretty typical for libraries. So that tells me a little bit about the skills that I need to have at the desk where people are checking out either a computer or a camera or something like that, or just a book. So there are really infinite applications for the tools that you might use with AI. And Tammy had asked me to talk for about 40 minutes, and so I want to leave you all plenty of time for questions if you have them. The resources that I've used or talked about here today include Google Arts and Culture. That's that image app I mentioned where I took a picture of my cat. The Arizona State University Image Accessibility Generator, Microsoft Copilot, and Google Translate. So some of these tools are free and some of them are not. So Google Arts and Culture is free if you have, say, a smartphone, a mobile device. The Arizona State Image Accessibility Generator is free. Copilot is not necessarily free. You have to have access to Microsoft products to use it, at least at the level that I was using it, to analyze that data. Google Translate is generally free, although I think that they're adding in some subscription-based elements as well. So the reason I mentioned that some things are free and some things aren't free is that the future may have arrived, but it's not available to us all. This quote, "The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed," is often attributed to the novelist William Gibson. Although I'm a librarian, and I'm going to tell you right here, there is no actual evidence that Gibson really said that. So, it wasn't in Neuromancer or any of his novels. And so, but it does sound like something he might say. But the broader point is that these tools are certainly available in many different forms. We might be able to find a great translator of Polish, of handwritten Polish, and pay for it. But we don't, to my knowledge at least, have one right now that's free and easy for anyone to use. And that's going to be true across the board. So I'd like to thank you all so much for inviting me here today. I brought my colleague Hannah. She's not a new librarian, but she's new to being a librarian at UW-Eau Claire, and I'm so grateful that she had the time to come here today just to meet you all and to see another part of Wisconsin as we drove up here from Eau Claire. And I'm very happy to answer questions. Hannah has also helped students and faculty with AI before, so I'm sure she would also have some useful insights if you have any questions about how we can use AI in our lives or teaching or something.
Okay, so on my phone, on the camera feature, I have, it's like a lens that I can take a picture of something and it will look up that object.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that, I'm guessing that's one form of AI.
Yes, Apple and Google are using AI for those identification tools, and so they started rolling that out, especially with like plant and animal identification.
Yes, yeah.
And that's something that's been in development for decades. So they botanists and people who create taxonomies
Right.
of living things have been making these giant data files so that you could see the shape of a leaf or the fluff of a tail or whatever.
Yeah, so like someone will donate an artifact
Yes.
to the museum. I can go on this and look it up, and you know, we have a form, you know, for contributions, and one of the things that they usually ask is, you know, or they ask is, what's the value of this? So that's kind of one way to, you know, to
Sure.
find that out. But
Sure.
and then you can get more information
Yeah.
sometimes.
So it might be searching in a publicly available collection of images to
Yeah.
draw comparisons.
Often it will be like eBay. or
And right, so an
something, you know.
eBay or another auction site or something like that where there might be an image.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience with something like that recently. UW-Eau Claire has this statuette of John Denver. And it was donated, and we were trying to figure out where to put it and what to do with it and what would be safe, and in taking a picture of it, I was able to find an auction site where I could see that the most recent occasion that statuette had sold, it sold for about $1,000. So that was a good barometer of maybe what the market could do for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're just pushing my parents' personal belongings right now. My
Sure.
son has been using it, but I don't even know, I have Apple. What could I put on my phone that would, because he just takes a picture of something and then he comes up with, oh, well, it's been selling for this amount and in this condition. And
Sure.
sometimes I don't even know what the thing is.
Yeah. So there are apps that you can download from the App Store. This is not a big area of expertise for me, but where you could look up an artifact or an item and see what eBay might say about it. So depending on what the item is, your Apple Photos will actually like collect some metadata from the internet unless you've turned off that feature, and you can look at the info.
Just from when I take a picture.
Mhm. Yeah,
So-
and it might even like, if you took a picture of this, you might be able to find that it says, this is a lantern, or something like that. And so that's one way. I use it a lot on nature walks with my kids,
Yeah.
so we'll take a picture of,
So open it
Yeah.
in your gallery.
So what's the name of the application that you're using?
It's not, it's just.
I think it's Google. I think.
Google
so
Lens or-
Frost,
in his case, it's
On an
Google
iPhone?
Photos.
you just go to the
Yeah.
camera, take the
Okay.
Yeah.
picture, you allow it to take the picture, and then there's
Yes.
It's
a,
here at Cameron.
you open that picture
Yeah.
up, and there's a little eye.
Oh,
Yeah,
you'll have to show
right.
her.
And so depending on the device you're using, it might be
Hi, Russ.
called something different. But yeah, so
So,
these are tools
anyway,
that are
if I
used.
Hit that button, then it'll give me
It
information.
depends
So,
on the
That's part
device.
of the,
Yeah.
part of the Google Photos business.
Yeah.
You got Android, right?
So
this
other
is the
questions?
Android.
Yeah.
So if I go like this and
What are some
take a
examples
picture
of
of
how
your
you
camera,
Do you have an Apple or an Android?
this is it.
in a museum?
Android?
Sure. Well, okay.
So,
Actually,
you know,
Yeah.
let me.
Prices and stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I got one that does bird sound.
Okay. Can we?
identification.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
So, I know that this is small,
I've got
and so
one
I'm
called
happy to read it aloud.
Song Sleep.
But
sorry.
while you all were finishing up your meeting, I was listening to the names of the communities that you mentioned, to get some ideas about some questions that we could ask an AI tool. And so, for example, I asked, how did Luck, Wisconsin get its name?
Those people there are all lucky.
Okay, all right. And so, Copilot, remember this is artificial intelligence, not a human. So Copilot says, Luck, Wisconsin got its name from Daniel F. Smith, the organizer of the township. Is that true?
Yeah,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, great. When asked why he chose such a peculiar name, he replied, I propose to be in luck the balance of my life. It's a charming story that adds a bit of whimsy to the town's history. Okay, so does this track?
It's one of three stories.
Okay, great. Oh, excellent. Okay, and so Copilot answered the question. It gave us one of three stories. So in this case, it has also cited some sources. And so Tammy's question was, how can we use AI in museums? And so one way that you can use AI in a museum or any context of life is to get a nice narrative answer to a question. Is it always going to be correct? No. It's not necessarily even always going to give you the full story. One thing that I think many people who work in kind of information organizations find is that writing can take a lot of time. If you're not a professional journalist, writing up the history of Daniel F. Smith and his organization of the township, that could take you quite a bit of time. Earlier you were talking about putting together a book and how hard it was to get people to participate. I'm not suggesting that you should use AI for your book project, but what I am saying is that writing is time consuming. And there are applications in a situation where you need to write a lot, where this could be a useful tool. I'll tell you, having graded a lot of student work that was read or written with AI tools, that it doesn't always read very nicely. It's often, it sounds a little antiseptic, kind of, there isn't a lot of soul, a lot of personality in what you get from this writing.
And the grammar is always correct and the spelling is always correct.
Well, right. Yeah, so the grammar can be great, and grammar and spelling are a big source of stress for a lot of people who have to write. And so it makes sense that would be a big time saver. But it doesn't always get things right. And so we need to read the information that we're pulling out of these tools. It's not simply enough to say, oh, well, AI did it for me, it was so fast. And I'll give you an example. So in my husband's family, every Christmas, we have a Christmas pageant. So it's about 60 people getting together and reading this Christmas play. They've been doing this since like 1962. So, but this year, my brother-in-law decided the Christmas play is too long. This is taking too much time. We need to cut some things out. And so, people are sympathetic, but his solution was to go to ChatGPT, another tool, and just say, write me a Christmas play. It should only take 15 minutes to read. So he showed up at Christmas and distributed these plays, and people started reading, and my mother-in-law immediately said, what is this? and then my husband said, well, there's no Caesar. I'm not being in a Christmas play with no Caesar. And so on. And so the point is that, if you're going to rely on these tools, especially for something personal or important that has a meaning for you, you're going to want to think critically about what its output is.
So yesterday, we were driving past this building that when I was a kid, it was a Texaco gas station owned by Harry Limbaugh. Okay, so now it's a bunch of other businesses, and I wanted to, all of a sudden I thought, I wonder if Harry owned that by himself or if he had a partner. And I asked my phone for some information on that. And it said that the Texaco station in Chautauqua was owned by the something other family that I'd never heard of until they sold it to start the Pioneer Village Museum in Cameron. Which was not, this wasn't even called in 1962. So this was not here in 1962, it wasn't here till 64. It was not started by a family, it was started by 3 women's clubs. And I know Harry Limbaugh was at least one of the owners of the Texaco and Chautauqua. So then I said,
Sure.
this is not correct. And so then it made up a whole other
new thing.
story.
Right. Yeah.
You ask it, what's your source? Because it isn't really necessarily inventing, it's finding things, and
Sure.
there are pretty inaccurate sources out there, so.
Well, when I asked some history questions,
Yeah.
this was ChatGPT for that one, about Rice Lake, and it was mixing, I said Rice Lake, Wisconsin, but it was taking Rice Lake, Minnesota, and
Yeah.
telling me some Native
Right.
American stories from there, and
Yeah, and so there's a librarian at UW-Madison named Dorothea Salo, and she has my favorite definition of all for these tools, which is AI tools are a making things up machine. And so it's when you ask it a question, most of the time it's going to give you an answer, and it's guessing, it's using math to make a prediction of what you want to hear. And so when you ask about Rice Lake, Wisconsin, but it's searching in its language model and it's finding Rice Lake and not really paying, and it's not, the language model isn't built to make sure that it's only talking about Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And so it's referencing Rice Lakes all over the place, and there could be Rice Lakes in Canada and Rice Lakes all over the place, and pulling in that data. With paid tools, so this is an example here of Copilot. The University of Wisconsin pays for me to have access to this. I asked it, who owns the Texaco station in Chautauqua, Wisconsin? And it responded nicely. It says, I couldn't find any specific information about the current owner of the Texaco station in Chautauqua. Local business directories or a visit to the station might give you more accurate and up-to-date information. So when you pay for these tools, you are also paying for some of those guardrails, some of the protections that we would hope would be available if we also went to our local visitor center or our local historical museum or whatever.
it kept referring me to
But-
the Chautauqua Museum.
Yep, and so you would hope that if you went to a museum in Chautauqua and asked questions about Mr. Lindbaum and the ladies who started that station and all of that, that there would be,
No, they started this.
okay, sorry, I misinterpreted, but I'm also not, perfect, right? And so we would hope that there would be some protection, in terms of the quality of the data that would come back to us.
See, there really is a reason
So-
to go to museums.
So I think that we have time for one more question that we could ask the tool. So does anyone have a stumper of a local history question that we could give to Copilot here?
How do you get to the Pipestone Quarry in the Blue Hills?
Okay. I'd
Blue,
like to know
Blue
that.
Hills is Barron, Wisconsin.
There in Wisconsin, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you get to the Pipestone, is it 2 words or one?
One.
Okay, Pipestone
Yeah.
Quarry in the Blue Hills in Barron,
County.
or Barron County?
Barron County.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, all right, so it's giving us some
Starting road.
instruction. So start in Rice Lake, Wisconsin and head east on US 53. Take the exit for Wisconsin 48 East. Follow that for about 10 miles. Turn left on County Highway F for about 5 miles. Then turn right on 27.5 Street. Follow for about 2 miles. Arrive at Pipestone Quarry located at 1971 27.5 Street, Rice Lake. Does that sound right?
Sure.
I don't know if it's F.
Oh, interesting, yeah. Yeah. So mapping is another area where AI has been at work in the underpinnings for a long time. So if you remember back to like MapQuest, when everyone's cars were full of those printouts and things like that of directions to places, and then people got those TomToms and it was like bong bong, wrong way, right? All of that was actually it was built using very primitive machine learning software programming. So it has only gotten better over time. I think that an example, mapping is a really good example where there are so many in-the-moment variables that the AI software really needs to be responsive to, because there can be a road closure, a traffic jam, a construction project that reroutes you, and all of those things. And so they're using the historical map data overlaid with a lot of very up-to-the-minute data. And so some amount of machine learning and now AI has really been necessary in making maps work as well as they do. But still, your question of, I don't know if it's really County F, good question. And I think in my limited observation of this, the letter roads in Wisconsin are problematic for these maps anyway, because of the
No rhyme or reason.
the X, the double X, the triple X, and so on. And that's hard for software to learn, especially when there are 50 states and then 180 countries and all of these different ways and routes that people can take to get
So
somewhere.
can you read off where it found that information?
Oh, great. Okay, so it cited multiple sources. It gave us the Pipestone Quarry trail system, the Pipestone Quarry areas, Barron County, Wisconsin Gov website, and then also a Bing search. So it's using its mapping search from Microsoft, and there are some other options as well. So it is interpreting information live on the web in addition to using its language model for its base knowledge.
So F is in that area, but I think it's on M, isn't it?
Interesting.
What goes
Yeah,
to Birchwood?
sure.
C.
C,
So-
okay.
So Dave, what day can they come out and walk into the quarry with you?
Oh, that
You
would
said
be-
that.
Yeah.
May, is it, or end of April? The Rock Club from the Barron County area has a road cleanup activity coming up. And as the end of it, Dave will be walking in with a group to the Pipestone Quarry. So if any of you are interested in picking up a few beer cans along the road, and at the same time getting a tour of the
Yeah, May
pipes.
17th.
May 17th at 10 o'clock, you meet at the
Ocean Gillis.
Rice Lake,
Yeah.
the
Gillis.
old Office Max store.
And we'll leave it exactly at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so bring your wood tick proof clothes.
At 10 o'clock, 10 a.m., Bush and Gillis.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty good, but just don't use Copilot to get your
No,
directions.
you're
Yeah.
not gonna get exactly
Yeah.
to the spot, because
Yeah.
it's not easy.
Right. But thank you so much for the invitation to speak with you today. I hope that this was informative. I know that artificial intelligence is a big topic, and I also know that everyone's experience and needs for this tool will vary. So I hope that this was at the least informative, and that you may be able to use one of these tools or think about it in your own museum at some point.
Thank you.
So those of you who haven't tried it, here's your homework assignment. Write down chatgpt.com, chatgpt.com. Click on that on the internet. Don't go, it'll say, do you want to create an account or log in? Say no, and then ask it a question. Ask it to give a paragraph of a picture you'd like to have drawn, like a voyager coming down the St. Croix River in a birch bark canoe with 5 people, and give it a minute or so and it'll create a wonderful image for you of whatever you ask for. Or ask it any question.